Today we're going to be making the base for our crocheted ornaments, and this is a great project if you have a lot of scrap yarn lying around and if you have some extra plastic bags. And for your ornament, you're going to need 3 strands of yarn. So we're going to work 3 strands simultaneously like they are one. So you're going to need roughly 16 yards of each strand. So scrap yarn is ideal for this because your yarn does not need to be the same size, weight, brand, or type. And you will need one of my 3 crocheted ornament toppers, so I will link to that video in the description for you, and you can pick any that you would like. And we're going to be working with a size N or 15 or 10 millimeter crochet hook for the ornament base, and a size G or 6 or 4 1/4 of a millimeter crochet hook for the toppers. And you can use any stuffing that you like, but I find that a plastic bag works perfectly. And if you're like me, then you might have a lot of these left over from doing all those curbside pickups, so now you can actually use them. So go ahead and grab your 3 strands of yarn, and we are going to work these as if they were one strand for the entire project. So we're going to begin with a magic circle, so take your tail and drape it over your working yarn and then pinch that intersection. We're going to insert our crochet hook from the bottom up, and while still holding that intersection, we're going to yarn over and pull through our loop. From here, we're going to separate our loop out, and we're going to work in this part over our tail. So go ahead and chain 1. And we're going to place 10 single crochets inside of our magic circle. And make sure you place all 10 of these single crochets over your tail as well as in this loop. And if you need a little bit more tail room, you can always tighten this up a little bit like that. And once you have your 10 single crochets in place, go ahead and pull on your tail to tighten the gap in your magic circle. From here, we're going to go ahead and set our tails to the side. They're going to add some stuffing to our balls, so we don't want to crochet over them. And go ahead and grab a scrap piece of yarn for this next row. We're going to begin by skipping our tiny little chain 1, and then we're going to place 1 single crochet in our first stitch here. Then we're going to go ahead and mark that first stitch that we just placed with our scrap piece of yarn. And I usually just draw this under the stitch and it'll stay in place for the row. So we placed 1 single crochet in our first stitch, so we're going to place 2 single crochets in our second stitch. And that's going to be our pattern going all the way around our row, alternating between 1 and 2 single crochets until we make it back to our scrap piece of yarn. And at the end of the row, we should have a total of 15 single crochets. And if the time comes that you start to run out of one of your strands of yarn, then all you're going to do is just take that strand of yarn and set it to the side like this. Grab your replacement strand of yarn and hold on to it. Then you're just going to line it up with your working yarn like this. And from here, you're just going to start crocheting with it. And as you can see, I sort of hold on to that tail while I place that first stitch just because it can easily pull through. Once you've placed a few stitches, you can go back and tie together these 2 tails. And the tails do act as stuffing, so there's no reason to crochet over them in the next row. And at the end of this row, you can remove your scrap piece of yarn. And the pattern for our next row is just to place 1 single crochet in each stitch in our row, going all the way around. So again, we want to mark that first stitch just like we did in the previous row. And at the end of your row, you can remove your scrap piece of yarn. And the pattern for our next row is to place 1 single crochet in our first 2 stitches. We can go ahead and mark that first stitch. Once you have your first 2 single crochets in place, then you're going to place 2 single crochets in your third stitch. And we're just going to repeat this going around our row for a total of 20 single crochets. And at the end of your row, you can start to sort of shape this into a ball by sort of pulling this up. From here, you can remove your stitch marker, and we're going to place 1 single crochet in each stitch in our row, going all the way around for a total of 20 single crochets. And again, mark that first stitch. And the pattern for our next row is to place 1 single crochet in our first 2 stitches. And don't forget to mark that first stitch. Then we're going to single crochet our next 2 stitches together. So to do that, you're going to insert your crochet hook up underneath your next stitch and yarn over and pull up through. Then insert your crochet hook up underneath the next stitch and yarn over and pull up through. So you should have 3 loops on your crochet hook, and you're just going to yarn over and pull through all 3. So that's going to be our pattern going around our row, and at the end of the row we should have a total of 15 single crochets. And at the end of that row, go ahead and stuff your ornament. So once you've stuffed your ornament, you can go ahead and remove your stitch marker. And the pattern for our next row is to place 1 single crochet in each stitch in our row for a total of 15 single crochets. And the pattern for our next row is to place 1 single crochet in our first stitch and then single crochet 2 together in our second and third stitch. And at the end of your row, you should have 10 single crochet stitches. So now at the end of this row, we're going to do several things. The first thing that we're going to do is cut a tail, but we want to leave it pretty long, thinking about 8 inches. Your loop should still be on your crochet hook, so go ahead and insert your crochet hook up underneath your next stitch, yarn over with your tail, and pull through all the loops on your crochet hook. Then pull your yarn all the way out to tie this off. You really want to tighten that down. From here, we're going to weave in and out of our last row of single crochets. So now go ahead and pull on your tail to tighten the cinch in the top. And if you have a smaller crochet hook with you, then this part will be a lot easier. But what we need to do is tie off our cinch. So we're going to do that by finding an available loop near the top here, preferably in that last row of single crochets. We're going to slide our finger around the tail to create a loop and then pull our yarn through the loop. So this is what I have so far. From here, I'm just going to twist my ornament around a half circle and tie it off. So this is just a very typical knot that you would use for sewing or anything like that. So from here, we're going to tie our loop that goes through our topper. So to do that, I want you to find an available loop somewhere near the top up here, just like this. And we're going to start to tie it the exact same way we did before, just like this, creating a loop. From here, what we're going to do is create a second loop through that same hole. So we want to draw it through so it's creating a circle. From here, we are going to tie off our little loop by holding on to our big loop. So that kind of preserves it. And we're just going to pull this loop nice and tight, just like that. And from here, we're going to draw these tails to the inside. And using your tails to sort of hide any larger gaps is really helpful. Before we add our topper, I like to roll my ornament around, sort of like I'm baking, to get this nice and round shape. From here, we're just going to simply add whichever topper we want, and now we are done with our crocheted ornament. If this video helped you, please consider subscribing to my channel, Crochet with Julie, for more crochet patterns and tutorials. Thank you so much for working with me, and I hope you have a wonderful, awesome day.